Before the sands turned cruel, before the wind learned to howl through bones of forgotten empires, there was a sea of green that covered the heart of Africa. The Sahara, now a vast expanse of silence and mirage, was once alive, a cradle of rivers and forests, where hippos danced beneath moonlight and rains fell with laughter upon the fertile soil. It was here, in the womb of that ancient abundance, that Zingha was born, not as a city of stone, but as an idea first, whispered by the wind and dreamed by the ancestors. They say Zingha rose where the four rivers met, where the desert had not yet claimed dominion, and where the stars seemed to gather closer to the earth, as if to listen to the songs of humankind. I have seen the birth of Zingha. I have watched its towers rise from clay and gold, watched the priests mark the horizon with fire. The earth was young then, and men remembered how to speak to the gods. In those days, the people of Zingha did not fear the Sunday. They worshipped it not as a tyrant, but as a brother. Every dawn, drums echoed across the valleys, their rhythms carrying prayers to the heavens. Every dusk, the scent of burning myrrh rose in spirals, sending gratitude to the mother beneath the fertile earth that fed their cattle and clothed their souls. At the heart of this kingdom stood the temple of Eshar, carved into the living rock, glowing red in the light of dawn. It was said to be older than the first rain, its foundation laid by beings not wholly human, the keepers of flame, spirits who taught early kings the balance between life and dust. Zingha's people were artists and astronomers, builders and seers. They charted the movements of the stars with instruments fashioned from obsidian and bone. They built aqueducts that stretched for miles beneath the fertile plains, carrying the pulse of water from sacred wells. And their queen, Ala Mekara, daughter of the sun, ruled not by sword, but by wisdom. Her eyes were said to reflect the desert's mirage. To look into them was to see both your destiny and your undoing. She was the keeper of the Scroll of Origins, a text written on palm leaves containing the story of the gods who shaped men from red clay and breath. Yet even as Zingha thrived, the spirit warns of a coming shift. All green becomes gold, and all gold becomes dust. The sun that blesses can also burn. I have seen the hunger in the wind, a hunger that devours memory itself. The people began to notice the change first in the rivers. One by one, their waters withdrew, as though retreating from some unseen fear. The rains grew uncertain. Animals began to vanish, their trails swallowed by heat. Still, the priests of Eshar sang. Still, Ala Mekara stood upon her marble balcony and watched the western sky, her golden crown glinting like the dying flame of a lamp. The gods are silent, she whispered one night to her son, Prince Oran. Then we must make them speak, the boy answered, clutching his obsidian dagger not in defiance, but in faith. The kingdom's scholars gathered, poring over ancient maps that spoke of an under-river, a hidden stream flowing beneath the desert's bones, said to be the blood of the earth itself. They believed that if they could find it, Zingha would live forever. So began the Great Descent. When men dug deep into the heart of the world in search of salvation, the sound of their chisels echoed through the valleys, mingling with the cries of vultures circling the bright, empty sky. I warned them. Not all treasures wish to be found. Beneath the soil sleeps memory, and memory, when stirred, becomes wrath. For in the shadowed caverns below, they found something older than Zingha itself, pillars carved with eyes that wept black resin, and markings that pulsed faintly like veins. The air trembled with presence. They had unearthed the chamber of the first ones, whose names were forbidden even to the gods. From that moment, the fate of Zingha was sealed, though none yet knew it. Above, the queen dreamed of fire raining from the heavens. Below, her people chanted praises to an awakening they did not understand, and the wind began to change. When men dug into the bones of the earth, they awakened what had long been dreaming. The caverns beneath Zingha were no mere tunnels, they were a labyrinth of time, a breathing temple of stone where the air shimmered with strange energy. The walls glowed faintly with markings, spirals, suns, and eyes that seemed to move when no one watched. The sound of chisels became softer, replaced by something else. A hum, low and rhythmic, like the earth itself was singing. At first, they thought it was water, the heartbeat of the underriver. But as they pressed deeper, the hum grew louder. It became a voice, whispering in languages older than memory. Born, child of dust, drink from the dark, and you will see as the gods once saw. Prince Oron froze. The voice was not in his ears, but in his blood. He felt it, the pulse beneath the ground. Warm, alive, ancient. Against his mother's orders, he led a small group of explorers further down the obsidian passage. What they found became the beginning of the end, a chamber vast and circular, its ceiling carved with constellations that shimmered faintly, even in the dark. In the center, a pool of liquid black, thick as oil, calm as death. Around it stood stone statues of beings not quite human, long-limbed, with serpent eyes and crowns of thorns. Oron approached the pool. The air trembled. He leaned over the abyss, and in his reflection saw not his face, but 1,000 others, kings, warriors, slaves, and stars dying in silence. Then he drank. The world above shuddered. Winds rose without warning. Birds scattered from their nests. Alamakara awoke screaming her son's name torn from her lips like a curse. Below, Oron's men fled, but he remained kneeling before the pool, trembling as light poured from his eyes. Visions overwhelmed him of cities swallowed by waves, of deserts forming from once lush plains, of the gods walking among men and weeping at what they had made. He returned to the surface, changed. His eyes no longer reflected sunlight. They burned with a strange inner glow. His voice echoed with the resonance of to his own, and something ancient layered beneath. When he spoke, the walls trembled. When he touched the sand, it hissed and turned to glass. The people fell to their knees in awe. The priests proclaimed him the mouth of Ishar, chosen by the gods. But the queen, Ala Mekara, saw only dread. For in her dreams, she had seen this moment too, and beyond it, ruin. You have stolen from the deep, she said to him. And the deep always takes back what is its. Still, Oron persisted. He believed the Under-River had chosen him, that the voice was not of wrath, but renewal. He commanded temples be built in its honor, adorned with black stone and mirrored pools. The chants of Zingha changed, no longer prayers of gratitude, but summonings, invitations to forces unseen. The old gods turned away. The rains stopped. The soil began to crack. The song beneath the dunes grew louder, no longer a hum but a dirge. The transformation began slowly. Sandstorms came, unending, fierce enough to strip flesh from bone. The rivers ran red with iron. The cattle died, and the people began to flee. But wherever they went, the desert followed, creeping like a curse behind their footsteps. Oron stood upon the palace roof as the wind howled and lightning tore across the sky. He lifted his arms and cried, "If the gods have abandoned us, then I shall make my own. Let Zingha burn brighter than their stars." That night, the temple of Eshar burst into flame. The black pool below boiled, releasing a sound that silenced all who heard it, a roar that was not thunder but grief itself. When dawn came, the kingdom was gone. Only dunes remained. Zingha was swallowed whole, not by water nor by war, but by its own hunger for eternity. But the story does not end there, for the desert keeps what it takes. Beneath its endless skin, the city still breathes, entombed in time, waiting for another age to listen. Sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, travelers hear faint echoes beneath their feet like drums beating from under the sand. And when lightning flashes across the horizon, the shape of a city appears for the briefest moment, towers of gold, bridges of glass, and a single figure standing at its gate, his eyes glowing faintly amber. All that is buried, whispers the spirit, is not lost. The dunes remember. The earth remembers. Zingha remembers. Centuries passed. Empires rose, fell, and forgot. The name Zingha dissolved into whispers, a myth traded between nomads at desert fires, a riddle buried in the language of sand. But the earth, the patient witness, does not forget, and neither does what sleeps beneath her skin. In the year 1932, a French expedition set out from Agadez, seeking proof of an ancient trade route lost to the Sahara. They found something else, a slab of black stone jutting from the dunes, carved with markings unlike any script known. When they unearthed more, it formed a perfect circle, 30 meters wide, fused glass along its edge as though melted by impossible heat. Professor Laroche wrote in his field notes, "It feels alive. When the wind blows, the stone vibrates, as if remembering a voice too old for us to hear." They camped that night beside the ring, but none slept. Beneath the soft hiss of shifting sand, there was a pulse, a heartbeat. And then, in the hour before dawn, one of the men, Idris, a Tuareg guide, began to chant in his sleep. The words were not of his tribe, but older. When they woke him, he wept, saying only, "The desert spoke through me. It remembers its children." Weeks later, they uncovered more. Fragments of obsidian tools, strange alloys, and beneath them, a sealed shaft leading down into darkness. The air that rose from it was warm, dry, and humming with faint static. When Laroche lowered a lantern, the flame turned blue. He descended and never returned. The shaft was sealed again by his terrified crew, and the site vanished beneath a sandstorm days later. Only Idris stayed. He said the earth had swallowed what must remain hidden. Decades passed, but stories have gravity. They pull the curious across generations. Satellite scans in 2019 revealed something extraordinary. Beneath that same stretch of Sahara, a circular anomaly, perfectly symmetrical, the size of a small city. Beneath it, traces of geometric alignments pointing east toward the Nile. Archaeologists called it coincidence. Others called it Zingha. They have found the crown of my children's tomb. They have heard the whisper rise again. The sands are thinning and time, like a wound, opens once more. Modern instruments cannot explain what follows. The desert there hums faintly on magnetic readings, the same frequency as human heartbeat. Cameras malfunction at sunset. Drones lose signal at dawn. And when the wind stills, a sound rises, not mechanical, but choral. Recordings exist. Faint harmonics, deep and layered like 1,000 voices breathing as one. Somewhere beneath that ancient sand, deep within chambers of obsidian and gold, the spirit of Zingha stirs. The pulse of its people, their dreams, their defiance, their descent beats still. The earth remembers. Every grain of sand is a letter in its unending scripture. And perhaps the kingdom never vanished. Perhaps it transcended, folded into the fabric of time itself. Lightning cracks across the horizon. For a moment, the dunes shimmer not empty, but luminous. Beneath the mirage, towers glint, rivers gleam, and the echo of drums rolls through the bones of the earth. The lost empire of Zingha breathes again, not in stone, but in memory, not in time, but in eternity.